The US just bombed Iran. The Fed didn't do anything with rates. Oil's going up over 100 plus bucks a barrel. Very likely we're going to see gas that could be five bucks a gallon. But one of the big things that I did as I changed my mentality, as I changed the way I look at things in the global world, in the financial world, and what had a big impact on my wife and I getting to the point of being valued at $5 million and being able to just recently on Friday, 2 days ago, put down money and sign the agreement of sale that we're going to be buying 50 plus acres so that we can make an investment, we can move our house, we can do some really, really cool things. Some of the big factors is that we've got to look at things in the easiest sense, right? And so if we immediately look at there's the economy, then there's the geopolitical factors, and then there's what we can do, okay? One of the biggest things that I learned early on after making decades of failures, okay, about 10 to 12 years of financial failure, is that my businesses, my companies, it didn't matter who was the president. We made money when Barack Obama was the president. We made money through 2018 and through Trump. We made money through Biden, certainly even in our investments, in the middle years there. And now even with Trump, where we've had crazy, crazy instability. And so the first thing there is recognizing like we can control these things. We can have a major impact on our decision making. We can make the right decisions and put out the right efforts long time to really change where we're going financially. When we're so tied to one party or another party, it really leads to substantial shackles because you're so aligned and you're so emotionally driven. And when we look at things like finances, dollars, and your bank account, they don't care about your emotions. They don't care at all. They care about what you are doing. And so the first thing I want to do is go into the economy. And when we're looking at simple stuff around the economy, right? The Fed didn't do anything. They're saying that no rates are really going to change until probably September. And essentially, inflation hasn't really budged. The job market hasn't budged, right? Like we're looking at some of these simple things. So immediately, when I start to think about the economy and where the economy is going, without thinking about Iran being bombed by the US and in this military conflict and us being involved, I start to think through very similar situations to what we're currently experiencing. Okay. And so, first, I believe this year really resembles 2018, like very much so resembles 2018. And a lot of people, okay, when we're looking at who's the president, in power right now, it's Trump. So we could look back at 2018 and recognize that throughout his presidency, the first time around, there was a lot of volatility. So we have to be prepared for a lot of volatility. We have to recognize that these things are going to be up and down. We're going to have crazy, crazy drops like we did in March and April, and we're going to have crazy rises back up, and it might happen again. And this is similar to that year of 2018 when we were navigating through tariffs. And really, right now, we're starting to look at okay, what's going on with tariffs, the Fed, uh, especially this coming week, gas prices and tariffs, all of these things, and start to really pop into your brain as to what really we can do. Okay, and so the first thing is to recognize we have to be involved with this long play. We have to think through, what sectors are doing well, what sectors can we put money into. And in 2018, a lot of people lost a lot of money. But if we just look at one simple aspect, okay, look at the S&P 500, and from 2018 to today, if you put money into VU, okay, the ETF that represents the S&P, you'd be up 156%. Okay, so in 7.5 years, you'd be up 156% had you put your money into VU back in 2018. That's freaking fantastic. You look at a company like Nvidia, you'd be up like 4,000% compared to 2018. I want to say Apple and Microsoft, it was like when I looked at the numbers and I was going through, it was like 450% increase since 2018. And so if we can just recognize that we have to play this long game, and the current environment certainly plays a huge role on what we're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. Okay, and I want to share two specific stocks with you guys that I think probably you could get into if you have all your ducks in a row, if you have all those financial I's and T's dotted and crossed. But right now, what we can do is recognize there's going to be a lot of volatility. And in this current stock market, okay, we can really look at some simple things and say, there's still a 1-to-1 job loss to job job available to people on the sidelines, right? So there's not a crazy market as far as jobs. So keep your job. Do what you're supposed to do. Keep your job. Make yourself more valuable. Make sure you're following through with all your proper tasks, because if you lose your job, it's going to be hard to find another job to replace that lost job. Okay, so the next thing then too is one number I love looking at is the number of hours worked, the average hours worked per week. Okay, currently it's around 34.3 hours per week. And I just want to keep this in mind. I want to put this into everybody's head. And I want you to think through, later on in the video, we're going to talk about what that even means for us and what we can do about that number. Okay, so we see that. We can understand and recognize those things that are happening. We can understand that there's a lot of signals that possibly by the end of 25, we might see a recession, but we might not. Okay, so we just need to make sure that we're slowly working through this, we're analyzing things, and we're looking at prior years and what happened in previous years. Okay, 2018 is a good example. And if you think about the long-term command and you recognize when Biden was in office, he didn't really do anything. He was sort of worthless in a large regard for a lot of different things. So there was less volatility. There was less crazy ups and downs. But it was sort of boring, and there was some years that you would make a ton of money, but there was just like less interesting news cycles. Okay, now with Trump, we know the volatility is going to be off the charts. One thing that we have to remember too is that the market currently in our modern era, what used to take 50 to 60 years ago, what used to take the market cycle 2 years might only take us 6 months to get done. The news cycle today, what used to take 6 months might only take a month. What used to take a month might only take a week. What used to take a week is taking like a morning on the stock market. So there's very quick reactions. Okay, now going into the Iran issue, what are we going to see as far as all those things are concerned? What's going to happen with the U.S. bombing Iran? Is this going to lead to some catastrophic issues economically? One, putting all things aside as far as human life, and nothing makes me more infuriated than war. I think it's just so ridiculous. It's so annoying. But as far as all the economic things that will occur, is that we have to recognize, because Iran can control about 20% of the world's oil supply based off the strait that they have control over with trade, cost of shipping is going to go up. Okay. Manufacturing anything with oil, plastics, think about anything along those lines, it's going to go up. Okay. There will be a large increase in gas prices, I believe, unless something gets resolved pretty quickly. Now, I was just playing around and looking at things like the Persian Gulf War. Okay, so when we bombed on yesterday, okay, now when we got into the Persian Gulf War in the early 90s, there was about a 17 to 20% drop in the S&P. Okay. Keep that in mind, because I think what ends up happening is we might see a dip early, okay? And when you see a dip early, we also have to look back at a short conflict like the Persian Gulf. And hopefully this becomes a short conflict, honestly. So we can look back and say, okay, within a couple months, that 17% loss was a 17% gain. So when we think through the long term and putting aside all the political emotions, putting aside all of the ties that we have to whoever the leader is, we recognize we have to play a long game. And when you play a long game, you have to be emotionless. You have to look at things much more logically. So we have to recognize that there will be an increase in gas-related prices, oil-related prices. Okay. But we might see some positive things come out of this. What I want to see, an interesting thing that I wanted to bring up is that I want to see what happens with Bitcoin. Typically, you'll see silver, gold, they'll go up during a conflict, right? And if Bitcoin is this digital gold, right? And Raoul Paul's been spewing that we're entering the banana zone for the last 9 months, and people still listen to this guy. We should see Bitcoin go up substantially over the next couple of weeks. But right now it's at 102. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm interested to see in this new era and comparing this current conflict to that Persian Gulf feeling. I was younger at that time, but I going back through history and looking at it, it might be a similar situation for the U.S. I want to see what ends up happening in that regard, and I want to see with Bitcoin being a new asset coming into the market during this time, what ends up occurring. Okay, so those are some things that I'm looking at now. Some of the things that I think we can think through is there's probably going to be a very substantial improvement in defense sectors. So you're going to see like Northrop Grumman, you're going to see Lockheed Martin. Those companies are going to start to grow probably pretty quickly. I wouldn't get involved with them. I don't like getting involved with those companies. Raytheon's going to probably pop off. I think one of the big factors here is like, I just don't like the feeling and the sense around being involved with something like that. There is one company I think that I do own shares in that I do think is going to do quite well. And I'm interested to see, I'll share that after this little point here, is that I still think we have to look at previous years, and the economy resembles 2018. This military conflict to me resembles sort of similar to the Persian Gulf and Kosovo. Okay, has that sentiment. You're going to see those specific sectors will grow quite a bit. ExxonMobil's probably going to do well as well. But for most of us out there, that means nothing. It literally means nothing. What ends up happening with all of these things, we want to get distracted by all this stuff. We want to read all the conspiracy theories. We want to think through like Trump's doing this because the deficit's so crazy out of whack that he's even trying to get this $3 trillion higher deficit budget approved. But the conspiracy theorists are going, he's trying to do this to then lead to quicker cuts, to potentially lead to the growth of Bitcoin, which then will come into the back door. And we love reading all these conspiracy theories, but they don't mean anything as far as what we can control. And what it comes down to is that first, you better have a freaking job. Okay, so you better be working. And if we go back to that number of working 34 and a half hours a week, what does that tell us? We got about 15 plus hours that we could have a side gig. And it all goes back to more income than expenses. Okay, so if we have more income than expenses, we can maneuver through these situations as smoothly as possible and not get caught up in all the conspiracy theories, not get caught up in all the financial discussions related to politics, not get caught up in all these things that distract us from saving a lot of money, from investing a lot of money, from growing our self-worth, from growing our value as an individual or as a family long term. Okay, so we want to avoid all that and understand what we can control. And so when we look back at this, okay, and we go, okay, so if we can recognize that first, we have to have at least 6 months of an emergency fund set in place. One thing I did not mention in the economy part was Microsoft just cut jobs. UPS is cutting jobs. Procter & Gamble is cutting jobs. So there is on the horizon likely going to be some type of more job losses. So keep in mind that if the average hours per week worked is 34 and a half hours, you can work another 15-hour side job and make more money and make yourself more valuable and make more connections and put yourself out there to make more income than expenses. Okay, so when you have more income than expenses, you save your first $10,000. If you have your first $10,000 saved, you try to work towards a 6 to 12 month emergency fund. Okay. And once you get to a point and you say, okay, I'm going to have a 8-month emergency fund set up. Once it gets over 8 months, now I can start to divvy out and make sure that I have my retirement funds all filled out. My Roth IRA is executed as well as possible. And now the next thing that we can do is we can start to look at, okay, I have more income than expenses. I got my emergency fund. I got that 10,000 bucks saved. Now I've got all my Roths going to be maxed out for the year. The next thing that I can do now, I can get into simple investments. Okay, so then we can get into a simple investment. And before I share the two stocks that I think everybody could possibly jump on, the big thing, remember, 2018 resembles today. 2018 resembles 2025. 146 to 150% increase in the S&P 500 since that point. So if you want to play it safe, all you've got to do is get SPY, get VU, put your money into VU, okay, as that first simple investment. Because that simple investment in my mind, and I still do this on a weekly basis, is I put that money into VU because we know probably in 7 to 8 years it's going to grow to that rate. Okay, so we understand that that's a simple, safe call. Okay, even looking back at, and it's just gonna, you'll see the ups, you'll see the drop offs, you'll see the ups, you'll see the drop off, but we know that's very simple and it's safe. Okay, then the next thing that we can do is we can think through, all right, we know what our monthly budget is. Okay, guess what you can have a big impact on as gas prices go up? You can look at things, and this is a big one, you can look at things that you can control. Don't eat out as much. Don't drive as much. In the middle of the day when you're not home, turn your freaking lights off. It's the summertime. Hang your clothes out outside. And I know it sounds crazy, but one of the things that I think that we've lost as a society is like, those are really, really easy things to do to save money. Like genuinely save a lot of money that will have a big impact. If you're driving less, it won't matter as much with the gas prices rising. If you're riding your bike or you're getting your kids to ride their bike to go places, it doesn't matter as much. If you turn your lights off in the middle of the day, it helps you. If you don't run the dryer all the time, it helps you. If you're not home during the middle of the day and you let your air conditioner go up to 74 degrees, it helps you. All of these things will help you with the rising costs. Another thing I wanted to bring up is I've been on this weight loss kick lately, and I've noticed that my wife has been like, yo, we're saving a lot of money, like hundreds of dollars a month because you're less fat. So now I'm eating less. We're eating out less, and we're seeing in the hundreds of dollars have a positive impact because I'm also drinking less cappuccinos. I'm doing a lot of these things at a lower degree. We're spending more time together as a family. We're going outside together more as a family. We're sitting around the fire more instead of going out to eat, instead of going to these fancy places, because we can control this and make positive decisions. Okay, so when you look at more income than expenses, I know based off of the 34 and a half hours of an average work week for people right now, you can get an extra side hustle to make more money. You can be healthier. You can make those, environmental decisions of not using as much energy. Those are all going to play a big role in the current environment. And then long term, you're going to have more sustainable habits that will help you make those better goals. And you'll recognize that you control all of this. Donald Trump or Joe Biden doesn't control if you can, hang your washout outside. That's the fact of the matter. And when we start to move past those things, we recognize that yes, the economy, yes, the geopolitical stuff, that all plays a big role, but we're in it for the long game. Two stocks now, okay? For me, personally, AMD, I've been hammering this every week. MI355, they just, Lisa Su just had another conference. They just went out even further this past week. We're seeing that the MI355 chip is going to be performing 3 times better than all of the other chips on the market. We're seeing that next year the MI400 series is coming out in March probably, and that's going to be performing at 10 times what the MI355 is rolling at. So now you're looking at something that I think AMD, I brought up the number with NVIDIA earlier. NVIDIA in 2018 to today went up 4,000%. I'm not saying that that's going to happen with AMD, but I'm saying that I believe it's a company that is going to perform extraordinarily well. Okay, personally, I believe that 100%. I think that's a place that we can all be aware of. The second one, Palantir. and Palantir does use some AMD chips. So one of the things here is that Palantir is a defense company, but they are also getting into the commercial space as well with AI. They do a lot of AI strategic planning, and I think you're going to see them start to pop off even further. They've been growing tremendously over the last year and a half. It's been on a lot of people's radar for longer than that. So AMD, Palantir, those are the two that I'm sort of looking at this coming week as we look at what is the fallout from the U.S. bombing Iran. How long is this going to last? When are the peace treaties going to happen? Are there going to be peace discussions? These are all like serious discussions that do scare me to a point. But just remember, from 2018, and I brought this up, 2018 reminds me of this year. Since 2018, we had COVID, so a once in 100-year health issue, right? And we got through it, and we still had 156% gains in the 150% plus gains in the in the S&P. Nvidia went to where it is right now. Okay, we can look at the ups and downs. You know, prior to COVID, people were believing that there was likely going to be a recession at the end of 20, somewhere around that timeline. But then when COVID happened, that changed a lot of stuff. We've seen tremendous ups. We've seen tremendous downs for the last 7 years. And I think just recognize that those factors come into play. Okay, remove your emotions as much as possible. You can control very specific things. You can control your emotions. You can control what decisions you're going to be making. You can control how much money you make based off of side hustles and what value you bring. You can control how quickly you can save $10,000, get that emergency fund lined up. You can control where you're divvying out that money. You can control what you're doing with your habits around, how much you're consuming, how much electricity you're consuming, how much gas you're consuming, and that's going to degrade the amount that you will be impacted by some of these negative global, geopolitical issues. I hope this helped somebody out there, and I'll talk to you guys later this week. Peace.